here. So nice to see you all. So first of all, I'm Cator, and I'm the president and CEO of Digital Promise. Really excited to have our guests here today. Digital Promise is a nonprofit organization with a big mission to spur innovation, to advance learning for everyone. So when I give you a hard time for having a very big mission, you can say, you got one too. So today, Sal Khan, right here, as you know, he's the founder and chief executive officer of Khan Academy, a not-for-profit with the mission, their mission, providing a free, world-class education for anyone, anywhere. It's a good mission. Yes. Let's start there. So in case anyone's wondering, so what makes him the expert on all of these kinds of things? He holds 3 degrees from MIT and also an MBA from the Harvard Business School, so he does know a little bit. He's been profiled by 60 Minutes. He's been featured on the cover of Forbes magazine. He was recognized as one of Time magazine's 100 most influential people in the world. And in late 2012, he released the book, The One World Schoolhouse, Education Reimagined. So Khan Academy, as probably everyone in here knows, is a learning platform. So let's kind of start by the numbers. So I'm going to say the numbers, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the latest things that I saw were that you have over 10,000 instructional videos in more than 36 languages. The topics are everywhere from mathematics, which is kind of the start, then science and history and economics, computer science, and more. There now are practice exercises that go with these videos. There are dashboard analytics and teacher tools. So more numbers. So to date, Khan Academy has reached more than 37 million registered students. So those aren't just the people who click on a video and watch them, the registered students in over 190 countries, delivering over 750 million lessons and 5 billion practice problems. So that's scale, right? Wouldn't you say that's scale? So we have this big problem of how do you scale in education? This is exhibit A for scale. So first question, just to kind of jump straight in. So let's kind of start there. Let's talk about the evolution of the product. You had a famous 2011 TED Talk, and it was titled, Let's Use Video to Reinvent Education. So obviously, you probably all know, and we know it's really not quite that simple, right? And because certainly video alone can't reinvent education. But you started with video. So talk a little bit about the evolution of the product. Kind of what did you add next? Where did it go from there?
Yeah. And actually, the TED people came up with that title. I had so just so you know how
Blame
these
them.
things work. I was just like, oh, okay.
That's good.
But you know, a lot of people might be somewhat familiar with how all this started. I was this was 2004, so almost 12 years ago. I was tutoring family members, and it seemed to kind of work for them. And my background was in programming, computer science, and so. The first thing I did, I started to write software for them, and that's what I first called Khan Academy. The domain name was available, so I set it up, and this was so my cousins could get practice, and I, as their tutor, could see what they were doing, monitor what they were doing, and then when we got on the phone, I could dig a little bit deeper. And it was a friend that suggested that I well, he actually said, how are you scaling your actual lessons? And I said, well, no, that's the hard part. You know, I have the software, but just getting on the phone and conference call with all these family members. And he said, well, why don't you record some of them as videos and upload them onto YouTube? And I immediately said, that's a horrible idea. YouTube is for cats playing piano.
It was at that time.
It was. It still is. And there's nothing wrong with that.
It's still okay.
But you know, I got over the idea that it wasn't my idea, and I gave it a shot. And you know, it was pretty clear in those early days that my cousins were really enjoying it and getting a lot of value out of it. But then it was you know, random people all over the world just started using it and saying, and it wasn't like millions of people back then. It was in the thousands. Yeah. But I would get these letters from folks saying, hey, this really helped me with math or really helped me with physics. And so that's what convinced me to do that.
And you were at a hedge fund at that time.
Yeah, I was an analyst at a hedge fund back then. But when we got our, you know, that just kept growing and growing and growing. In 2008, I set up as a not-for-profit. And then 2009 is when I was like, well, I can't focus on my day job. So I decided to jump in and try to do this full time. And it was then in 2009, 2010 that when I started talking to philanthropists, and said, well, what's the broader vision? I said, well, videos are a piece of it, and they'll hopefully, they continue to be a piece of it, but we have to have ways for students to interact. We have to personalize for students. We have to focus on metacognitive. We have to build tools for teachers. We need to internationalize this.
So even in those early days, you sort of had this vision of where it could go on into the future.
That was the original pitch, and then a lot of what you've described, we've come a long way in the last 5 years. Well, we have a long way to go, and we could talk more about that.
Yep.
But if you go to Khan Academy today, a lot of people still associate us with the videos, and that's still used a lot, and we still create a lot of videos, but our software is fairly sophisticated for people to do personalized learning. We have this partnership with the College Board around the SAT and the PSAT.
We'll talk more about that for sure.
And we're doing a lot of work internationally. So it's definitely, and the team is much more than me now. We've grown 100-fold to 100 people now. So.
Yeah, you have a lot of people there. It was interesting. So I was at the Department of Ed in those early days, and I would get calls from reporters, for example, that would say, is Khan Academy going to, disrupt was kind of the word of the day, but is it going to replace teachers, right? And I would say, if teaching is only explaining, then our explainer-in-chief can take care of that, can take care of teaching, right? So clearly we all know that education is much more and teaching is much more than explaining things. So it's incredibly helpful how you've explained so many topics. How do you come up with those topics? Like how do you curate? Tell me how the topics just themselves kind of bubble up.
In the early days, it was where's their need? And when I was working with my cousins, it's clear, you work with any family members for any amount of time, and you'll start saying, okay, algebra, and then within, or pre-algebra, negative numbers, exponents. So that's where the math started, and then I went into some of the sciences, because just that was where there was clear need from just family, and I had a background there, and I enjoyed it, so I would go into that. And then it was really valuable getting that feedback in those early days from YouTube, and then now off of our users on Khan Academy, to just see what they say. Even today when I upload a video, I immediately, like half an hour later, I'll go and I'll see what people have said. And
it's good.
The positive feedback feels good if there is some. And then, but then there's, somebody say, well, I don't quite get this, or I don't quite get that. And you're like, oh, maybe I could have explained that better. It's causing some confusion. So that's really important. Now that we have a bigger content team, we think about what are the core things that would represent an education, and we prioritize them in terms of how much need there are, to what degree are they a bottleneck for people to achieve their goals. And so a lot of those STEM areas that we started on, we've only continued to flesh those out, but we are now starting to do history, grammar.
Well, I remember also you looked at the Common Core and you kind of did a crosstalk, like which of the topics within the Common Core, have you pretty much covered everything that's sort of associated with Common Core?
Yeah, this is what a lot of people don't appreciate at Khan Academy now. Back in the day, it was a guy operating out of a closet and kind of introspecting on what are the essences of math or physics or chemistry. But as soon as we became a real team, about 4 or 5 years ago, when the Common Core seemed to be like, hey, this is going to be a real thing. And I was at first skeptical. I was just, okay, it's another standard. But then I looked more closely. I was like, oh, this is a substantive, rigorous standard. We started really building for the Common Core. And today we have, our videos are completely aligned to the Common Core, but maybe even more interestingly, we have 150,000 questions for the Common Core. And as far as I know, this is the only library of questions that was actually vetted by Bill McCollum and the Illustrative Math team, who was one of the authors of the Common Core. Because they felt, hey, this is going to reach so many students. We want to make, a standard is one thing, but then how it's implemented is another thing. And there's all these jokes that you'll see about the Common Core. There's just a bad question asking a kindergartner to write a math sentence and all of these types of things. And so, for educators out there, I don't think there's enough awareness to realize that there's a really great library of Common Core material already out there. Videos, exercises, we're starting to write articles too as kind of a reference material. So we're just going to continue to add more and more there.
Okay, so then you have the videos, you have the practice problems. Talk a little bit about the teacher tools.
Yeah, and to your point, when we first came on the scene, people, they like to use the word disrupt, and they like to draw parallels with Amazon.com versus Barnes & Noble's. Is this somehow going to replace physical classrooms or teachers? And we've always been exactly on the 180 degrees opposite that. Even the talk the TED Talk, if I had my choice of how to name that TED Talk, I would have said, how do we free up class time for more human interaction?
That's
would have been the
better title.
Very
good
that
title.
That was the and that was actually what the talk was about.
Yeah.
Where I talk a little bit of how Khan Academy got started, but
Yeah.
I'd say, hey, these teachers started emailing me, and the flip classroom wasn't my idea. These teachers said, hey, we're doing lectures at our own time and pace. I talked about that halfway through the talk, but then the rest of the second, whatever, 8 minutes was about, well, look, if you take a lecture out of the classroom, well, then maybe everyone doesn't have to learn at the same pace anymore. Maybe you can have everyone going at exactly what they need to work on and not have these Swiss cheese gaps that accumulate otherwise. You don't have to separate students by perceived skill level. The teacher could spend much more of his or her time doing focused interventions or Socratic dialogue, just more human interaction. That in the old world, the teacher spends most of their time lecturing or grading and very little time with one-on-one interaction. Now you could increase that by an order of magnitude. You could have most of your time is one-on-one interaction. And so, I mean, everything we talk about is that. That's why from day one, when I was a tutor of my cousins, I made tools for myself. And then we've always had a teacher dashboard and teacher tools as a core part of Khan Academy. And as we go forward, we're only thinking of more ways that we can empower teachers to make their classrooms more personalized, arm them with more data, and meet the students' needs.
And so Los Altos School District was kind of the first place where you said, let's put this in a classroom. I think it was 6th grade, fifth, 6th grade, something like that. You worked with the teachers, you worked with the students. I visited that school with you several years ago. What did you learn from that interaction, like seeing how these things were used? Sort of like it's very obvious a student doing homework, they can get the explanation again and try some things and get some just-in-time help. What did you learn? So the flipped classroom, I understand, are there other things that you learned about what kinds of things are helpful to teachers in a classroom situation?
Yeah, well, what we saw in that first year pilot in Los Altos, and it wasn't a kind of a flipped classroom actually, it was actually using the software to allow all the students to go on their own personalized
And the
journey.
teacher had a tablet and they could see
Exactly.
red
Teacher
spots,
had a tablet and see where everyone was and who's struggling on what, and then, okay, I could do a focus intervention, or I could get these students to help each other. And there's a couple of really interesting learnings. That first year, it was with 5 classrooms, and it was like magic. It was like unbelievable. We're like, wow, this by next year, every school is going to be exactly like this. But I think as you start to, and the teachers loved it, everyone was very happy about it. But then what we realized is, as you try to grow even more, this first 5 teachers were the ones, they were already wanting to do this, and what we saw when you scale more. Teachers have so much to do. There's so much, and then there's changes. There's the Common Core. There's this. There's that. There's new textbooks. There's only more and more demands on their time. Even if they philosophically agree with the principles of personalized learning and mastery-based learning and not pushing everyone together at the same pace. I've spoken to groups of teachers. They all intellectually completely agree with it. It's what's taught in ed school around differentiated instruction, et cetera. But there isn't the time in their day to be able to do the retooling. And so what we've been exploring since then, and we've had some, and we could talk more about it, is we've started this learning challenge that we piloted in the Bay Area last year. We call it LearnStorm.
I get those emails.
Okay, very good.
Get going.
Very good.
Start learning.
We're doing it this year, also in Chicago and Idaho and in Ireland, and we could talk about why Ireland. But but it's a learning challenge that celebrates schools and students that are engaged in personalized learning. And what's interesting is when we do it as a challenge, it all of a sudden becomes a lot less scary in a lot of ways. And we've actually seen more high fidelity implementations of personalized learning by putting this challenge. And it's really fun because we worked with superintendents, and it gives superintendents a very actionable thing to do with their district. And then it's this fun, co-opetition type of thing where
people like challenges.
Challenges, and it's not the traditional math challenge where it's like, oh, the 5% of kids who know the most math get the trophies. We're able to celebrate students and schools that are showing grit and perseverance. Because, and you say, well, how do you measure grit and perseverance? Well, we could see students' activity, and then what happens? Are they challenging themselves? And then what happens when they get something wrong? Are they giving up, or do they keep on going? So we have this thing called the Hustle Index, which is measuring essentially grit. And that's what we're rewarding schools and districts around.
So can people get their own Hustle Index? Where you're more hustly than your neighbors?
If you're outside of LearnStorm. we could think about generalizing.
Of all the people in
Yes.
Ireland, you're the 97th percentile in
Yeah,
hustle.
yeah,
That's good.
That person would be intense.
So let's talk about data. Yeah, exactly. Let's talk about data a little bit.
Yeah.
So it's technology, it's a platform, it's online, you have people engaging. So you can collect or, see lots of information. How do you think about that data? And is there data that you look at every day, every week that is kind of your guiding light?
Yeah, in the beginning, one of the exciting things, but we have to be very careful, is yes, if you have data in this world, we can do things that people in education could have never done before. If you were publishing textbooks, or even today, you don't know who's reading what page. Right. You don't know what's engaging. You don't know if, hey, can I just change page 5 a little bit, and does it get better engagement or have better learning outcomes? All of that stuff we can now do on Khan Academy, or frankly a lot of the organizations that are here. But we also have to be very careful with that
Absolutely.
data. One of the reasons why I felt it was very important for us to be a not-for-profit is, and this was back in the day when it was just like an idea, but if we have a lot of people learning and we are leveraging the data, people have to feel very confident that it's only for the point of improving the learning experience for students.
Yep.
And so the ways that we improve the learning experience, it could be in a kind of a macro way, as we put resources out there. Are they engaging with it? How, if they interact with one thing, how does it affect their ability to do the exercises?
Yep.
Are they able to show the mastery? A/B tests at Amazon.com might be, hey, let's change the button and see if people buy more books or whatever. We can do A/B tests, say, hey, if we change this or that, do people engage with learning more?
And have you done an A/B testing? Can you use an actual example of something?
Oh yeah, we probably have 30
time?
A/B tests running right now. So it's continuous.
Yep.
I mean, almost every time we make a significant change to the site, we at least do an A/B test to, are we not breaking something? But we're usually looking for some type of an improvement. And it's interesting because it's not just around your traditional internet metrics of draw engagement and usage and more people on the site. Is you can start to do things that are kind of real ed research. We partnered with Carol Dweck's group at PERTS at Stanford around growth mindset. And there's these statements like your brain is like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets. Or your brain grows when you get a question wrong, or grows more when you get a question wrong than when you get a question right. And we experimented just showing this to students, and while they're doing Khan Academy versus a control of just inspiring messages that weren't growth mindset focused. Yep. And we saw 4 or 5% improvement in engagement, and this is an N of 60,000. Yeah. And which we were able to get the data in a matter of days. And there was only a few percentage of our user base. So you can imagine the types of experiments you can start to do around that. We're pretty excited about a partnership around the College Board.
Yeah, so talk a little. So the College Board, so explain what that is to
and
everybody.
It's really from the data point of view, because the College Board, creators of the SAT, they have a new head of the College Board who joined 2 or 3 years ago, David Coleman, and to give them a lot of credit, College Board's a 100-year-old organization, but David said, hey, look, there's this thing called test prep. At least there's a perception that it's an unequal playing field. Yeah. And they said, as we create the new SAT, which is going to be more aligned with what students actually learn in school, we want to address this. And so they reached out to us and said, would you guys be willing to create the world's best test prep that happens to be free on Khan Academy for the SAT? And we immediately said, yeah, absolutely, because to your earlier question, we want to do the things that are kind of most important for students' lives. And so many students, the SAT can be a gate opener or not.
It is.
And so we started working on that. And once again, it's personalized. Students go. They helped us create the items, vet the items, and let us know kind of how the test is made up. And what's really exciting is the PSAT, which 80% of American students take. Before, the PSAT, when we all took it in 10th grade, was kind of like, oh, well, you got some practice. Or maybe if you're in the top 5%, oh, there's this national merit program or something like that. But now, after you take the PSAT, and this is live as of a few months ago, as of the last PSAT administration, if a student gives permission, and it's very important, we don't do things without the student's permission. If the student gives permission, all of that information from the PSAT can get slurped as a diagnostic into Khan Academy.
Yeah.
And so, one of the toughest problems in personalization is how do you get the initial information on what the student is really strong or weak in, and how do you get it in a high fidelity way? Well, now that you have a test being administered to 80% of American students, that can act as that diagnostic for personalization. And so now we can leverage that, and we can know, okay, you're strong in functions, you're weak in this type of grammar passage, you're strong in, and then we can immediately start doing weak point training from the get-go. And then we can, if the student gives permission, we can see how does that affect their outcomes on the SAT.
Right.
And then we can leverage that loop to really do very, very massive iteration on how do we improve our content so it's more engaging and impactful, and how do we personalize it better so that students, you know, when they show up, they're like, wow, this thing, it knows me.
So have you thought of any partnerships like with school districts or something? So say there are many superintendents in the room. So if a superintendent really wanted to understand where their district was, where the students in their district were, are there any sort of interesting either research studies or partnerships you've done to share that kind of information, even in aggregate?
Yeah, so I mean, there's definitely things along those lines we've been doing, and we're going to be doing more on that front. And I think the two biggest areas where districts can really work with Khan Academy, obviously any district could use Khan Academy tomorrow, and I'm guessing several districts already use it out here. But LearnStorm is something that we're hoping to spread next year, and the superintendents are actually, and district administrators are the people that have been instrumental here. You know, when we did it in the Bay Area, I met almost, you know, not just myself and the team, we met almost every superintendent in the Bay Area. The Bay Area is kind of made up of, you know, 50 or 60 smaller districts. And they were the ambassadors of LearnStorm. And it was pretty powerful because a lot of times a district, you know, superintendent, it's hard to impact what actually happens on a day-to-day basis in a classroom. But here the superintendents were able to say, hey, well, this is pretty cool. And we give them a kit. And they're able to say, hey, do LearnStorm. They can provide their own incentives, trophies, pep rallies, whatever, for the schools, the teachers, the students that show a lot of the grit, a lot of the hustle. And all of this work that they're doing, the personalized learning on Khan Academy, it's all directly tied to the Smarter, Balanced, and PARCC assessments. And we've done studies with SRI. We did a study in Idaho.
Yeah, talk a little about the SRI study and the results of that. And if you have another one in Idaho, I don't know about that one.
Yeah, well, both studies, I mean, the big takeaway, and these are hard to do. And
they're very hard to do. These are evaluation studies, and we all know it's in ed tech, it's very hard to kind of hold a product still long enough to do a study, right? But the necessity of understanding much more about the efficacy of all of these products is incredibly important. So that's the question. SRI has done a research study on this. So it would be evaluation
and I mean,
research.
it's just the difference. The product itself. It's very few ed tech, you know, they change every month.
Right.
And then, you know, just all of the variables in the classroom and then the fidelity of the implementation. And so these things are very hard. And that's actually one of the reasons why the SAT is very interesting, because it's a very, it's more normalized in a lot of ways. But the studies that we did at SRI and the other one we did with the Albertsons Foundation in Idaho, I mean, they saw very strong correlations between time doing what we call the Khan Academy missions. These are the Common Core aligned grade level personalized learning experiences for the students, and better than expected performance. So you would always expect a student that, you know, did well on the pre-test to do well on a post-test.
Right.
But that time correlated with even that student doing better than expected, and across the and once again, these are correlations. It's very hard to point to causality and all of that, but it was pretty strong evidence. And then the kind of subjective evidence was pretty interesting. But, you know, that's just a, you know, from a superintendent point of view, I think LearnStorm is one thing. It's just a fun way to engage people on growth mindset, engage people on personalized learning, engage them. And at the end of the day, this fun thing they're doing, and we happen to do it in the spring right before the Common Core assessments. These things that are fun actually should pay off. Help students do better on these Common Core assessments. So I think LearnStorm is a very interesting thing. I think you know, the partnership with the College Board around, especially for the districts that have high schools in them, around the PSAT in 10th grade. There's going to be a PSAT for the 8th grade as well, and so that's a very interesting thing as well. And you know, we're exploring with the College Board things like, you know, district tools so that a superintendent can get better visibility. When
people take the PSAT or frankly work on the SAT, do you ask them what grade they're in or something, so you get a sense like maybe there are like 7th graders taking it now, like on your...
Yeah, so this was really, I mean, you know, before the partnership, we could intuit a lot based on, you know, what videos or exercises people are doing and what grade level mission they're picking, and there's a lot we can try to figure out. But now, if you know, we can have better information around who these students are. And you know, on LearnStorm, students say what school they're representing because the school wants to get credit for their work, and what grade they're in. So that's been helping us a lot. And the district officials we worked with love kind of the ability to foster this fun co-opetition within their district, and then to see like, wow, there's something. I mean, we've discovered it at kind of a regional level, and then superintendents have discovered really incredible things happening in their own district that they didn't even know about, because it's one teacher doing this incredible, you know, they were able to somehow steal a laptop card someplace and do personalized learning, and they have these great outcomes with their students, but it's just this one-off thing, and then you know, a superintendent can take that teacher and let them spread that practice.
So, okay, so you're using the term personalized learning a lot, and I kind of want to point out, like, it's very individualized, right? So it lets people go at their own pace, but there is kind of a sequence. I don't know how much differentiation there is. Like, do you ever differentiate? So if you miss 10 problems in a row, do you get a different approach, or do you get the same videos? You know,
we don't right now, and we hope to over time.
Adaptive approaches necessarily.
Yeah, we won't give, like, for learning that skill, we won't tell you, hey, go watch this different video now.
Right.
We do tend to have, you know, you pick your skill, factoring polynomials, we probably have 30 or 40 videos on that thing.
So you can get lots of
and we never, on the videos, we actually never tell students you must watch a video. That's much more of the students taking the agency and saying, oh, maybe I could use this or that. And the view is, if you get it from enough different angles and enough different example problems, it'll click. The personalization here happens really in terms of personalization of what skills, you know, what's your graph of the things that you're weak and strong in.
Yeah, so it's individualizing your kind of pathway. What's the, so if we think about the, I'm going to transition a little bit to thinking about other things. When I think about these videos and you're engaging people in these big topics, how else have you thought about how to engage students in things that can't be measured necessarily, but answer these questions and getting them right, but engaging people in solving a complex problem on food or water or poverty or, you know, whatever. You could answer this by transitioning a little bit to talk about your lab school and how you're thinking about those in-person interactions as well.
Yeah, no, well, you know, at the Khan Academy level, we've taken a few stabs at that. You know, our computer programming platform on Khan Academy, this is another thing very few people, I mean, a lot of people know about it. It's one of the most, you know, it's a heavily used part of our site, but a lot of, maybe in districts and things, people aren't fully aware. I mean, we built with one of the top computer programmers in the world, and even with the Dartmouth Computer Science Department, our computer programming platform is something that is, we built it literally for elementary school students, but you're using real JavaScript. It's a syntactic programming. It's very visual and creative, but we've had graduate students use it for their thesis to write simulations, so it's also very powerful. But what's neat about, you know, programming is it is, you know, it's, yes, you can test whether a program works or not, and even that's, you can't do automated. It's kind of a human has to tell. And then it's like, was the code good? How creative was this? Et cetera, et cetera. So on our programming, students can build their portfolio and actually can get peer reviewed on projects. So that's our first foray into doing something like that, which has been pretty neat. And, you know, things like LearnStorm, we have these weekly challenges, which are more, you know, not kind of auto measured, but, you know, to your point, you know, even in my book, and even, you know, to the Khan Academy isn't to replace classrooms; it's to liberate classrooms. And I think a lot of people might have not taken that seriously. They're like, oh, well, that might just be lip service. No, this is genuinely what we believe.
It is.
And, you know, in my book, the last third is, what does the classroom of the future look like? Right. Where it's not lecture-based. It's much more project-based. Students are able to get their core skills at their own time and pace. And so and a lot of people say, well, that's utopian. I agree with it intellectually, but it's utopian or whatever else. And so I've been kind of chomping at the bit for a while to, like, prove that, no, you can do that. In a real school. In a real school. And so we opened up a lab school. It's a separate entity. It's a separate organization. In your building, but it's in our building. It's clearly, you know, close to us. Where we can show this model. And once again, we haven't figured out. I mean, there's a lot of things. They're like, okay, that doesn't work.
So one interesting thing, I joined you. You invited, I don't know, 100, 150 kids together, high school kids, young people, to do a design day to design a high school. Like, what is the school you want to go to? It actually was incredibly compelling. And as an observer, I was there for the day. The most interesting thing to me was these students came out with probably, if all of us like spent the next day putting together our ideal designs for a high school, they came up with pretty much the same thing that I think we would come up with if we worked that out. Did you take that as kind of the beginning nuggets of how you wanted to design a school?
Yeah, we took from that day, I mean, there's a lot of great innovation going on and all over. I mean, there's public schools doing really interesting things. There's private schools, there's charter schools. So we started talking to them, and we still connect with a lot of them. And the idea is, okay, let's take a lot of those ideas, make our own version of it, learn from that, continuously iterate. It's a lab school, so we should continuously break things and see if we can improve them in some way. It should be a lab for Khan Academy to, hey, let's try this out with real teachers, with real students, but also for it not to be in isolation, where the team at the lab school is working with teams from charter networks, teams from the local public schools, the superintendents in Mountain View and Palo Alto, who are local to us and the rest of the country, to think about which of, they're doing a lot of cool things that we could try those things out. They might want to try out some of the stuff we're doing. Over time, as we start to figure out things that really work and really are transferable and scalable, if we can make Khan Academy a platform for disseminating and sharing that, maybe eventually we create tools. We've been having a conversation at Khan Academy around like our long-term vision, and our long-term vision genuinely is, in 10 or 15 years, if you are a young girl living in a slum in Calcutta, that you'll be able to get a low-cost cell phone or smartphone and literally self-educate yourself, and then somehow prove what you know, and also build a portfolio through real hands-on projects somehow. And if you're the world most of us live in, you have access to a school, that whatever Khan Academy is in 10 or 15 years supercharges that. So everyone wants to do personalized learning. Everyone wants to do project-based learning. But when you sit down, right now it's only happening from these super heroic teachers doing it all themselves.
Or superintendents who are actually making it happen in your district.
Exactly. It's very hard. And so, but if it could be something, kind of hey, all the resources are here in a box for you. And you mix this with great people who really care about students and great students, and and it's going to work. And so that's, and you might know I left out textbooks in that. I mean, it should be something that really empowers as many people as possible. And so I kind of view the lab school as analogous to when I was tutoring Nadia 10, 12 years ago, where that helped me understand what kind of content I should make for them. And so as we have this lab school, and it's in its very early stages, I've already learned a ton.
What have you learned? I was going to ask you that. Like, what are some of the early learnings?
It's only further reinforced kind of the experience of teachers, how valuable a role they play in the process. It's reinforced how difficult it is to do authentic project-based learning. You can, most project-based learning right now is, if it's happening, it's very cookbook. Because there's a fixed class period, you need to get everyone to the same endpoint. There's kind of a stigma behind failing, which is, I think, the stigma itself is a bad thing. So how do you do authentic learning? How do you let students really explore but not take on something that's they have no chance of achieving, but not something that's too easy for them? I mean, these are very hard things. How do you do, personalized learning? We're seeing really great things. They're obviously using Khan Academy for their core skills in math, and they're seeing great results there. But what does personalized learning mean in reading? What does it mean in and we've been experimenting with some tools from folks out here, but it's not all tech. I mean, we're doing personalized learning with, there's books at different lexical levels, and you can pick them and all of that. But the important thing is that students have a lot of agency. And I would say the one thing that I feel, it's a learning, but it's really reinforced a core belief, is that if you give students agency, it's pretty incredible. I mean, we are seeing 6-year-olds planning their goals, reflecting on them, saying, absolutely. I could work harder. I don't have enough grit. I need to I
need to hustle index.
Yeah, exactly. And it's really powerful. And they'll meet with an older student, and as kind of a coach, kind of, and you see the response when the older students have responsibility, it really matures them in a very positive way. I mean, one of my theories is a lot of this kind of adolescent or high school teenage angst.
Yeah.
It really is that they're proto-adults,
Yeah.
but a lot of times we treat them like kids,
Yeah.
and we make them only worry about themselves,
Yeah.
their grades, their homework, But if you give them responsibility and you allow them to take, leadership roles with other students, and it's authentic, you see them stepping up.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm actually going to take a few questions from the audience in just a couple minutes. So, be thinking about your very snappy question. We'll take a few and then ask you to respond to these. But it's kind of, most people know your story, starting with your cousins and teaching your cousins and putting them on YouTube. I think you went to school in Jefferson Parish, Louisiana.
Yes, yeah.
So,
is Jefferson Parish here? There you go.
There we go.
Phoebe Hurst,
Louisiana.
Meisler, and Grace King. Yes. Are
There
you the
you go.
superintendent of Jefferson Parish? Oh, okay.
No, but she's very famous. You should
Oh,
talk
okay.
about her. So, does any of your own personal experience from high school and your own upbringing, your early years of your own education, I mean, we know kind of MIT and Harvard probably notwithstanding, what was your own kind of high school and experience back in the day?
I consider myself pretty fortunate in that, Louisiana isn't famous for
Right.
But Jefferson Parish was, and I'm guessing still is, was kind of this pocket of some really interesting things going on. I remember, a lot of even what I talk about around students having agency and mixed age classrooms and all of that, in elementary school, and it was interesting. My sister was in the gifted program. She was 3 years older, and I thought I was in the gifted program, but it turned out it was speech therapy. Because it's very not like they take you aside, they take you out of classroom. It's just, which
that's awesome.
And I have positive memories of that. But then, because my sister was like the superstar student, they kept testing me for the gifted program, assuming that
see if you could pick up the pace. See the hustle index could improve.
The last test must have been erroneous because Farrah is so smart. Surely Sal must have something. But I have to say, I remember that first. I remember very little about second grade, except for that first day that someone took me out of a class and they brought me to the gifted room, and there were these two teachers. I still remember, Miss Krause and Miss Roussel. I walked up to, and there was a bunch of kids, all different ages. Some were playing chess, some were drawing, and so I was like, what is this? It was in the secret part of the and I walked up to the two teachers, and they asked me to, and they're like, so, what do you like to do? And I was like, are you asking me? And they're like, yeah, what do you? I was like, well, I like to draw. I like puzzles. And they're like, okay, we'll draw and we'll do puzzles. And I was afraid to tell anyone about it because I thought it was this weird loophole in the system that I was in the. But if I reflect on my own elementary school, most of my real learning that I remember, I point to Miss Krause and Miss Roussel, what I learned from my peers and all of that, and that was a really great experience. And then as you go through middle school, high school, I'd say high school there was a really powerful thing that they had is they allowed students at my high school to take classes at the University of New Orleans simultaneously, and it was just this really empowering thing because once again you have agency. You go, you get to be kind of a college student while you're still in high school, which is kind of a really cool bridge. Overall it was I consider myself a lot of what what I'm talking about right now came out of that. Now on the other side of it, I did see a lot of friends who we're peers, they're A students, but all of a sudden we get to algebra class and all of a sudden they got a C or they started failing. Or all of a sudden we get to trig or physics or chemistry. And I used to why did this happen? That person, they can beat me at chess, they're this and that, why are they? And even then I said, well, I think they have some gaps in their knowledge. Or, in high school I started tutoring peers and I started to see, wow, no, okay, the reason why you're having trouble with the algebra is your negative numbers are a little bit shaky. And once you got that, I would see my peers oh, okay, well, the algebra is pretty straightforward then. And so that, and I even saw that even in college, where you see, even at a place like MIT, you see people hit walls
Yep.
when they take the quantum physics or the whatever else.
Yep.
And it's never because that class is fundamentally difficult. It's because people had gaps that accumulated at some point. They become debilitating.
Right.
And if you allow people to go at their own pace and fill in those gaps, you don't know how far people can go.
Yeah. Questions? Yes. And thank you for standing up.
Thanks so much for the talk. My question is around a lot of what's been discussed has been in the K-12 framework. I'm sure you're not surprised to know that a lot of adults have really benefited from filling in the gaps in their knowledge as they continue to learn in their lives, myself included. My question is, are there core competencies that you consider for lifelong learning? Often people revisit some of your K-12 product for that in their lives, but
Yeah.
would it make sense, or have you thought about fleshing what that would look like?
That's a great question. So there are 36 million adults in this country, in the United States, so not even speaking globally, in the United States who have low literacy, low numeracy, low job skills. And so a tool like this, absolutely helpful for people of all ages. But have you looked at that kind of adult?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because when making the content, it was initially for cousins who are in the K through 12 system for the most part. But from the beginning, if you look at our average, I actually didn't believe the numbers the first time I got them off of YouTube. Like the average age was like 30. And I'm sure there is some types of kids using parents' accounts and things like that. But there's a lot of people who want to learn kind of the core skills. I mean, so we have a lot of team members here, and almost every week at our company meeting, we read testimonials. And our most typical testimonial is an adult learner who wants to go back to community college, is afraid of math or science, spends a summer on Khan Academy, and it's like, oh, I knew math better than I ever did before, and I was able to test out of algebra or like that. We hear almost every day. We get a letter like that. So that's a pretty strong use case. One thing that my old day job, I was an analyst at a hedge fund, and during the financial crisis, I just we parked most of our fund in cash, because we didn't know what was going on. I kept reading the Federal Reserve Act. And then as I kept reading, I was like, those people on the news don't really know what they're talking about. And so I started making videos on credit default swaps, mortgage-backed securities, systemic risk, what do banks do, all of these types of things. And I won't say from where, but I got a letter. This was in November of 2008 from someone from an investment bank. Said, thank you so much for that video on mortgage-backed securities. I now know what I do for a living. So it's better late than never. But in all seriousness, we're continuing to do a whole series of things around financial literacy.
Yeah.
We have a whole thing around the accounting and finance that we already have on Khan Academy. I'd go far, if you learn what's already on Khan Academy, you're already more empowered than I would say a lot of people who've done an MBA and majored in finance. We continue to do a lot on current events, on civics. How's a primary different than a caucus? Things like that. We have a partnership with Bank of America around the financial literacy, but keep a lookout for stuff that's going to be more career oriented. And we're thinking of things that should be anywhere from someone who's just gone to college and thinking about what they want to major in, all the way to, frankly, most of the folks in this room, like what could I be doing in 5 years or 10 years? So yeah, we definitely view that as something we can contribute to.
Another question? Yes.
Yeah. So thank you for everything. Writing this down because I'm kind of having a Beatles fanboy moment here. For the participating colleges and universities who have already adopted really easy-to-use toolkits for capture, streaming, basically leveraging our subject matter experts to create our own Khan Academy. From what you've learned from LearnSpace, do you have any sort of advice around adoption or encouraging them to create content, kind of changing that culture, that stigma being recorded and kind of being in front of or being captured?
Yeah, no, I mean, it is this really, I mean, in the early days when I was making videos, my first thing was like, okay, well, I can make some, but there's so much to cover. Let me start recruiting other people and get some friends. And what I saw is, I mean, I had friends with PhDs in physics and whatever else. And like when you talk to them like for fun, they're like the most engaging person on the planet. And then as soon as you press record, they turn into this like PowerPoint academic thing. I will cover 3 topics. The first, and I think there's a lot of fear of of this fear of failure. We're talking about like traditional grades, and when it goes all the way to the experts in their field, where and I've talked to them. They're almost more afraid of what their peers will say about them than about connecting with the students. I personally think it was a huge blessing for me that I started on day one doing it for my cousins, and I didn't think other people were really going to listen. So it made me very comfortable, very relaxed. It allowed me to be myself. If I made a small error, I could kind of laugh it off and fix it. And it's fun. I mean, obviously, if we make a significant error that would hurt a student understanding, we redo that video. But if it's a small error where I can, like 2 seconons later, I'm like, oh wait, oh no, of course I forgot the negative. We realize not only is that okay, but that's what students like. That's actually one of the things that, probably our second most common letter we get, is, it made me feel so good about math in that video where I saw Sal go down the wrong path for 10 seconds, and he realized he made a mistake, and you didn't edit that out, and then he went down the right. I was like, because every time I've ever seen an expert do it, they always somehow magically know the exact steps. When we know that's not the way it really works. It's just because that professor did that problem 50 times before. And so I think there's something really beautiful about allowing people to really get in your head, really exposing yourself in terms of your mental thought pattern. And yeah, I mean, I don't know what, I actually do force myself to smile before I make a video. People can tell whether you, where that energy is coming from.
You watch cat videos first.
I watch some cat videos. Yes, maybe a bit. And yeah, but I think you smile. You should only be making a video if you really think what you're about to make a video on is exciting. It will carry through in your voice. I've, not that I do it myself, I've recommended a glass of wine every now and then. Because it really does. If people can feel more comfortable, not think about, and even today, I sometimes do. I was like, oh, well, now if I make this video, millions of people are going to watch it. But I completely, I don't even let myself think about that. I'm like, okay, it's for Nadia. It's for 12-year-old. I mean, Nadia's 24 now, but 12-year-old Nadia. That's who. Yeah. That's the audience.
That's good. You have an audience. So we just have a couple minutes left. So what is next? Kind of where do you see this going?
Yeah. And if y'all have interest, I encourage y'all to explore LearnStorm, because it's likely to be many more geographies next year. In fact, at the main stage, myself and Mark Huplamazian, who's here, the CEO of Hyatt, we're going to talk about what we've done with LearnStorm and where that could go potentially nationally.
And before I forget, actually, tell us really quickly about Ireland. Why Ireland?
Oh, well, Ireland, one of our board members and supporters is a venture capitalist and also a reality TV show star in Ireland. And he's like the equivalent of the Shark Tank in Ireland, which is it's pretty the #2 show in Ireland. It's called Dragon's Den. And he decided to create, he called it Mathletes, but it was essentially the precursor of LearnStorm in Ireland. And he got massive engagement, the Minister of Education. It was a nationwide thing. Yeah. And so he's the guy that when he showed that to us, we're like, well, that's a good idea. And so then we did it in the Bay Area. They renamed it LearnStorm. And then we did Chicago, Idaho, and potentially nationwide next year. So LearnStorm is something to keep a lookout for. For sure, keep a lookout on the SAT. And once again, it's related to the SAT, but the SAT is actually very aligned with the Common Core now. And so that actually could be a very interesting prep, especially for your high school students to get 2 or 3 birds with one stone of getting ready for college and being college ready as measured by benchmark exams like the SAT. International. I was in India recently. We have actually created a separate entity in India to do it, all out, mapped to the curriculum. And there's already a full Spanish Khan Academy, which is already relevant to even students in the US. There's a Brazilian Portuguese. We're talking to folks in the Middle East. But the goal literally is, in that 10, 15-year vision, it should be in every major world language on every major platform.
Fantastic. Well, please join me in thanking Sal Khan for sharing with us.